Thierry. I'm here with Scott. Would you mind introducing yourself, Scott?
Yes, I'm Scott Smith. I'm a founder and principal at Changeist from the US. We created Changeist as a way of helping organizations really understand how change is happening today in lots of different spheres of the world, and particularly how technology and change in technology and change in consumer behavior interacts and evolves over time. So it's to help them understand where there are new opportunities that are emerging in that relationship between consumers and technology. And it could be in not just in electronics and sort of the digital world, but in health, mobility, the way that we move around, the way that we work and play and learn, lots of different areas. But to help them understand that change and then see new opportunities in those areas. During the last 10 years, what are the main changes that you've noticed and that organizations had to face? A much greater understanding of the depth of consumers' lives have emerged in businesses. They really begin to see people not just as bags of money that purchase products and use them, but they begin to understand them as entities that interrelate, that have more depth to their lives, cultures and subcultures of their own. Tools like anthropology have become much more applied to sort of see the depth in people's lives and see the dimension in the way that they exist. And so that, I think, has been a really important shift. But it's required a new viewpoint in the way that businesses approach the world. Have organizations already adapt to this change? Their organizations are trying to, the best they can, adapt to it. Businesses and organizations will, at the end of the day, always be businesses and organizations. They find it very hard to be flexible and very hard to be perceptive and to use information intelligently in a widespread fashion to plan not just for the next business cycle or the next quarter, but to plan through the near future and even to look out into the distant future and understand how things will change. How do you measure if companies and organizations have changed to adapt this new consumer behaviors? One way to measure the way that companies have adapted is to sort of see how they have reorganized themselves and how they have changed the way that they approach the world. What new types of professionals do they have involved, and what kind of probes and monitors do they have out in the environment to measure that? Are they simply looking at it through a very distant lens, simply on paper, or are they beginning to get closer to the real world themselves and engage people who can help them interpret and see the real things that are going on, and more importantly, get out themselves and be present and be a part of that change in the environment? Well, the very fact that we're talking at this conference talks about or speaks to the issue of digital technology has changed radically the relationship between people and businesses. But there are those deeper levels of human character and of social change are beginning to well up and affect the way businesses operate. Businesses need to deal with consumers in the way that they deal with themselves in terms of social networks and interaction. They need to understand, and they will understand, the way that reality and emotion and authenticity and all of these different things that are part of the human being is pushing out more into the way that people behave as economic consumers, and they'll need to adapt to that going forward. What are the main challenges you think for organizations of the future? Companies are built to make money. Fortunately, there are nonprofit organizations and other types of organizations that don't have that profit motive necessarily, who need to simply find ways to reach out and help individuals, people, consumers, however you want to cast them. The difficulty is going to become humanizing the enterprise, essentially humanizing the business while still maintaining that need to make money, make profit, and support shareholders. And there's going to have to be some balance achieved between the pure need to achieve a sort of a capitalistic aim of any corporation and the need to meet the changing demands of consumers' lives. We look at the economy today. Yesterday, the stock markets fell radically. There's an enormous amount of change in the air in terms of politics, society, business, economics, the environment, technology. All of these things are pointing towards a real radical change in the way that businesses and governments operate. in the big picture, and they're going to have to deal with the fact that consumers' needs and demands are becoming much stronger, particularly the need for social support and the need for services, products, etc., that can help people lead better lives and not just simply turn more profit through the corporation. I think a future corporation may look something like a piece of a university with the kind of pure research and development that can go on in those environments, a piece of a nonprofit organization, an NGO that has human interest at its center, and also the sort of cohesive driving pieces of a normal commercial business fused together. So that there's more balance between those three pieces and not just the economic component driving everything forward.
So it's going to affect the way that companies are running their businesses. Is it going to affect as well how companies are recruiting people and the way people are actually trained, like in universities, etc.?
It should affect the way or the types of people that are coming into organizations. You're seeing, again, a new push to reach recruits from the social sciences, sociologists, anthropologists, psychologists being brought in, probably more involvement going forward with academia to enable more pure exploration of the types of things that companies can't get into themselves. I think it will bring a softer edge, not necessarily a weaker edge, but a more human edge and more sort of empathy and depth of intelligence, of social intelligence to organizations as they shift the way that they recruit individuals into the company.
Looking at today's organization, is there any corporation you could think of that you think is the most adapted to what is going to change in the future?
None really jumps out. No corporation, looks today probably like they'll look in 20 years' time. There are those that talk about having these changes happen. There are those who are trying to reach out in small ways and make changes to the type of staff they bring in, their strategy, etc. But I think we've yet to really go through that shift. We're going to have to move beyond organizations that pitch themselves as being socially responsible or socially conscious, but that's really only kept on a leash, on a lead by the economic part of the company and not allowed to expand more deeply. And we're going to get beyond sort of the California, West Coast of America, model of socially conscious companies into probably an entity that looks more like the way that European societies run and European organizations, particularly nonprofits, run today.
And final questions. What are the risks corporations are taking if they're not doing this shift internally? Do you think they should be leading the change, or followers will be just fine?
Well, there's probably always going to be insulation for the followers, that a certain layer will be protected. But there was discussion just this year at Davos and even Bill Gates got up and spoke about, do we need a new kind of capitalism? Do we need a new kind of way that businesses run? And I think when you have a few strong early movers begin to take positions in the marketplace and adapt the way they operate, and those may partly come out of the technology industry. Certainly places like petroleum or large manufacturing may be last to change. But there will be a leading edge of companies that begin to make that shift, and I think they're already beginning to recognize now that it's necessary. Those that don't move may find themselves pushed into certain change by governments who may take a stronger role in the way that businesses operate to create more social equity. And they're going to be facing a much stronger social, individual, and consumer and groups in the future that make them change.
Well, I thank you for all this information.